I've highlighted some articles and videos that use keywords from our past content. These are short, simple, and easy to understand even without much context. I hope this helps expand your English expression.
Review and different perspective. Reading practice. For speaking. Read silently or aloud, as if you were telling it to someone else. Articles and essays are read aloud and paused after each chunk or sentence, giving you time to read and understand the meaning before moving on. The video does not stop, so pause it where you want to practice phrases or any parts that interest you.
Tabloid media. How much of what you've done as a slightly more grown-up woman, once you're into your mid-late 20s, has been shaped by, I don't know, reclaiming your image and being in control of it?
Once you. Feeling a loss of belonging.
And there's this feeling. Once you leave where you're from. Like where you grew up. That you don't totally belong there again.
Gratitude for support.
I will never forget who was there. When I was having a hard time. Once you went alone through a dark time. You appreciate every little act of love you receive.
Be behind the camera. And I think part of that was that I started to take my own self-portraits. And this is before the selfie or digital cameras. We had, it was with film and it was with a timer.
This is before. Frans Hals was great at painting group portraits, capturing moments of conversation and laughter, which were challenging for most other artists.
And the way that he brings out their character. And he also tackles group portraits. Group portraits are difficult because you have a lot of figures in one scene. You have to avoid it looking slightly boring, essentially, because they could become ever so many portraits. But Frans Hals really knew how to make them interact and be in conversation with each other, gesturing. And again, this really gives you the feeling as if you're witnessing a specific moment. People are caught sort of in mid-movement, and he's equally good at capturing people smiling or even laughing. Is something that most artists would avoid simply because it's too difficult. You know, it's very difficult to catch someone smiling or laughing without it becoming a grimace or, you know, or something forced. We have to remember this is before the age of photography, obviously, and yet there is a sort of photographic quality to how he catches a moment, and I think that is what made him such a great portrait painter. I mean, people sit still for a portrait.
Reflecting on the past and future of music. Exploring the role of technology in music.
Vibrato towards the end of the notes to give it a little bit more of an expressive quality. That's a nice chord to end this excerpt on. So, I think a good question asked by ocarina is that, is this a toy or is it an instrument? Maybe it's both. But for me, I think the more important question is it expressive? And at the same time, I think creating these type of instruments asks the question about the role of technology as it plays for how we make music. Apparently, for example, not that long ago, like only 100 years ago, it's not that long in the course of human history. Families back then used to make music together as a common form of entertainment. I don't think that's really happening that much anymore. This is before radio, before recording. In the last 100 years, with all this technology, we now have more access to music as listeners and consumers. But somehow, I think we're making less music than ever before. I'm not sure why that would be. Maybe it's because it's too easy just to hit play. And while listening to music is wonderful, there's a special joy to making music that's all its own. And I think that's one part of the goal of why I do what I do, is kind of take us back to the past a little bit, right? Now, if that's one goal, the other goal is to look to the future and think about what kind of new musical things can we make that we don't perhaps yet have names for, that's enabled by technology, but ultimately might change the way that humans make music. And I'm going to give you one example here, and this is ocarina.
Pictures. We're so sick of you complaining, and just take your own pictures. And that's how I started taking photos, was by wanting to document myself, how I felt I was. And
that's how I prioritize self-care for sustainable success.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Lavender. It's Eileen. So we are nearing the end of our Dream Life series. I've taken you through the entire journey, and now we're going to talk about how to find balance throughout this entire process, how to not get burnt out basically. So we're going to talk about self-care, how to build healthy habits for yourself to keep this lifestyle sustainable, because that's the point. You want to be able to last long. So in order to last long, you can't just get stressed out and burnt out really quickly in the process. You have to make sure this is something you can do happy, healthily, and in balance for the long run. So the first thing that I have to talk about is nobody is perfect, and I'm not even sure that a perfect work-life balance exists. Sometimes times feel good and things feel imbalanced, and then sometimes like something comes up and everything gets thrown out of balance, and that's just the way life is. But I think the point is to not be so hard on yourself, is to learn to let it go easily. Self-forgiveness, again, is really important. I see a lot of people get really stressed out in their careers, whether they're in school or in anything. Like even YouTubers get so stressed out. I don't know if you guys realize, but like when I'm meeting other creators, like I notice how hard everyone is working, which is really commendable and respectable. But at the same time, I see a lot of people getting burnt out, and it's just not healthy mentally. So this is one thing that I want to share, and this is one thing that I always try to tell myself too when I'm not being as productive as I want to be, is success at the speed of balance. I honestly don't remember where I first heard that quote, but it really like resonated with me because it's not a race. Life is not about like getting there as soon as possible. It really is about like having a sustainable, happy life where you can like build your dreams in a good way, like not suffering so much along the way, but actually enjoying the process, enjoying the journey of like growing and learning. Success at the speed of balance basically means to just do your best, but go at a pace that you can handle, because we just have a lot of things going on in our lives. Like you gotta forgive yourself for not going as fast as you want, because you know, you gotta focus on your family for a while and focus on your health and make sure that everything in your life is taken care of. And like I said, remembering that it's not a race, it's not a competition, making sure that you're just enjoying the process rather than trying to get to the end goal ASAP. So as you're building your dream life, self-care is so important. I would say it's one of the top priorities that you should focus on in your everyday life, is to remember to take care of yourself, give love back to yourself, because only when your own cup is full can you go out there and give your love and energy for others and create good work, because it's like the most basic thing. Take care of yourself in order to like function properly and then be able to do things for others. So self-care could be as simple as getting enough sleep, drinking enough water. It really is like the basics of like just giving your body what it needs, like exercising regularly, you know, doing things to keep yourself healthy. Personally, I love to journal and meditate because that's how I stay grounded. That's how I feel at peace. It's different for everybody. Ask yourself, what are the things that you really enjoy doing? Things that make you feel like you're like filling up your cup. What makes you feel pampered? What makes you feel at peace? And make time to do more of those things. Make time to like put that into your routine, whether it's like daily, weekly, or monthly. So I made this worksheet to go with today's video. It's on self-care and ideal habits, just designing your
After a life-changing experience, Adam realized the power of small acts of kindness.
Incredible richness and fullness.
Do you feel, as you look at life before that incident and after it happened, do you sense a marked difference? Because I know from reading the book, it's like you've always been someone who has that sense of soul. You had a huge heart. You always wanted to do the right thing. But it sounds like after that, it was like, bam, like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was a completely different person after that. Yeah, completely changed my life. You know, I didn't go into semester D expecting to have that big of a personal change, but I've always said it's kind of the best and most important experience that I've ever experienced or personally dove into. And I think, you know, part of it is just first exposure to a world outside of my own that was so foreign. Going into the developing world, you know, being in India, being in Vietnam and Brazil and, you know, townships in South Africa, all crunched within a 3-month period. it just opens your horizons to such a wide place. And going through that right after certain death, the wave hit before we even got to a single country. It just changed my perspective so that when I came home, that's actually when I had the biggest culture shock. It wasn't going into these foreign places. It was actually coming home with new eyes.
You mentioned India, which I know something very powerful happened there,
right,
which would go on to kind of culminate in what's become Pencils of Promise. And it's, one of the things I love about the book and why I think our audience is going to love it so much, you guys are going to freak out when you read this, is that it's divided by 30 mantras, 30 chapters, and there are these wonderful guideposts and ideas that can really help all of us not only find the true purpose of our life, but live that through.
Yeah.
And so I love this mantra. It was every pencil holds a promise. Can you tell us the story?
Sure. So I had a habit that I had decided even before going on the ship, which was I was going to ask one kid per country, what do you want most in the world? I would have them write it down on a piece of paper, and then I would create this collage when I got home. And I thought I would just, have this really cool set of global interests. And I expected to hear the things that I wanted. And so I thought a kid in one country would say a house, and in another country they'd say a car, and in another country they'd say, the latest gadget or piece of technology. And so in the first place that we got to, which was Hawaii, after we got shipwrecked, I met this beautiful young girl. I said, what do you want if you could have anything in the world? And she said, to dance. And I thought, whoa, that's really different. Maybe I'm going to get some kind of surprising answers. And then in China, a young girl said a book. And then in Hong Kong, a kid said magic, which was my favorite. And then when I got to India, I just saw poverty that was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. And in particular, it's children, 4-year-olds begging on the streets with 6-month-olds in their arms. And you feel helpless. And I think that that's something that a lot of people often feel, which is there's a big issue or even a small issue, but they don't feel like they're in a position to actually make a difference. And so that's how I felt. And I happened to find this boy begging on the streets, and he was my one kid in the whole country. And I said, what do you want if you could have anything in the world? And he just had nothing. I'd never even considered that my life or another child's life would exist in such poverty at such a young age. And he looked at me, and his answer, if he could have anything in the world, was a pencil. And I just was blown away, and I gave him my pencil. And when I did, he just lit up. And I could see that this idea that you can't actually change somebody's life, that you're too young, you don't have enough money, or you're not in a position of power and influence, is actually ridiculous. It's a broken idea, and it doesn't exist. You can provide one small act to one individual person that can really change the trajectory of their life. And when I gave this kid my pencil, I could see this curiosity, this spark of creativity, this sense of opportunity that he had never grasped before, filling up within him. And so after that, I passed out pens and pencils as I backpacked through, 40, 50 countries, which led to then the organization being called Pencils of Promise.
That's awesome. And I'm tearing up because every time I've heard you tell the story before, but every time I hear
Thanks for watching. I hope this helps your learning English.